Dead by Daylight is a fucking stupid ass game. Now, I've been getting ready for quite some time now to make a passion project about my personal favorite game of all time. But instead, I'm deciding to make a whole ass video essay on this dumbass game because every time I boot it up, it pisses me off. I had always been aware of this game's existence, but I didn't ever play it till about late September of 2020 because I'm a simp. But that's an entirely different story for an entirely different day. Dead by Daylight is a game that is absolutely ripe with potential, but somehow fails to achieve that potential in so many ways. I personally find that this game has some pros, but a lot of cons. And what gets me every time is that the community treats it as the second coming of Christ when it isn't. So, I'm about to get canceled on my very first video, but why don't we dive right in? First off, what is Dead by Daylight? Dead by Daylight is a team-based survival horror game, but not really, where 4 survivors take on a killer and attempt to escape the arena that they're placed in. You might be asking yourself, Seeker, that sounds like a lot of fun. What could possibly be bad about that? Well, dum-dum, it turns out a lot of things, actually. My first pro about Dead by Daylight is the crossover character aspect of the game. And it's honestly my biggest pro for the game, and it doesn't get much better from here. Having a bunch of iconic horror characters go at it with each other, it's not exactly Smash Brothers, but having Ash from Evil Dead and Pyramid Head in the same room, it's a weird fever dream that I didn't even know I wanted. And on that side note, Pyramid Head and Silent Hill making an appearance in this game. Konami must have slipped up or something. I don't know what they're doing there. Then we got Stranger Things. Now let me say, I've never watched Stranger Things, but I've always wanted to, and I always thought it was a cool premise for the show, but every time I went to watch it, my Netflix ended up shitting itself, so I just never got around to it. And having Bill from Left 4 Dead and Nightmare on Elm Street representation, the game has such a fun roster of killers and survivors and maps, it almost tricked me into thinking it was a good game. Now, my second pro would have to be the music. It's a very minor thing about the game that I really like, but it really helps accentuate the atmosphere and give it a certain level of fidelity that I didn't really expect from it, especially since the version I'm playing on is the Switch. More into that later. Now, I'm not a musician, but I can really appreciate when the music enhances either the gameplay or even when it creates a nice relaxing setting like in the lobby with the guitar when you're not waiting for 40 fucking years! Now, my third pro and my final pro is that I actually really like the atmosphere of this game. Now, granted, buyer beware. This will depend on how your display looks. If you're running it on a 2009 720 HD TV, it's not going to look as good, and it might hamper the atmosphere. But to the game's detriment, for me anyway, which is playing on the Switch version, I actually still think the game does a great job of encapsulating the different areas and how everything looks. The game is still able to make me nervous and always have me watching my back because I don't really know where the killer is or where I'm going to shit my pants due to the killer, finding me and chasing after me. But unfortunately, with the core gameplay issues that we'll discuss in a moment, I think it actually ends up as a detriment to the atmosphere of the game that it tries so hard to make. And, well, now we're going to get into the cons of the game, and you may be saying, well, when's he going to talk about the gameplay? Well, that is my first and biggest con on this list. The gameplay here is such a fucking mess, man. Let me explain. There are 4 survivors and 1 killer. Killer's goal is to kill all survivors. That makes sense. That's pretty straightforward. It's got its own list of issues, but the survivor gameplay, which is the majority of what I play because it's what you can play with friends, and it's what I've experienced the most, is just the absolute stale piece of bread fucking ever. Survivor's objectives are to fix 5 generators and get the hell out of that arena. Now, there are minor things that you can do, such as cleansing totems. You can heal your teammates, heal yourself, open up treasure. There's a lot you can do, and you can also find a key and use an escape hatch, but there are other requirements that you need to meet first before you can do that. So the main thing is fix 5 generators, open escape gate, get out. There comes a huge caveat with that. You know the loading screens that every new generation of consoles was working so hard to get rid of? Well, welcome to the game. Holy shit, this game puts me to sleep! Welcome to Dead by Daylight, loading screen the video game. When you're a survivor mostly, everything you do gameplay wise is just sit and hold a button. Sit and hold, 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 sit and hold. It is so goddamn boring that when you're not getting your ass chased by a killer, you are sitting and holding a button. Now, you do need to watch your surroundings. I guess there's a little more, and it gives you a quick time event every once in a while. I guess this is the way the game tries to build tension so that when a killer is nearby, you try to panic and run. But once that initial tension is gone and you're used to playing the game, so let's say after the first 5 hours, it is so goddamn boring. While fixing generators isn't a fun gameplay mechanic, the game tries to do little things to rectify this, but the problem is it doesn't rectify it because at its core, it's such a boring thing to do. It becomes quickly tedious once you're past, again, let's say the 5-hour mark. It's why I pick up and play this game so sparsely. I don't even know how some of my friends have managed to clock literally thousands of hours, but hey, more power to them, I guess. Now, people will swear that this game is way more in depth and that there's a lot of strategy, but as far as I'm aware, the only strategy you can really implement is try to fix those 5 generators and skedaddle. The game does a very poor job of trying to incorporate teamwork or communication in any meaningful ways, and while granted things might be different in other console versions, unfortunately I'm playing the Switch version, and as far as I'm aware, it is a detriment to the game. Now, there are minor ways you can shake up the game. Every character has perks, tools you can equip. You can bring in these things called tokens to shake up the game, but it's so minor, and I only really feel like that high-level players can really get a lot out of that. And the game does such a poor job to let anyone who just wants to kick back and play and enjoy it. It feels tedious. Everything about this game is tedious. That is the word that best describes this game. Or you can do boring. I wish the game would implement new objectives. Fixing 5 generators at its core is just, it isn't interesting. I don't care who you are, that is not an interesting thing to do. No one likes to sit and wait. The whole joke that I remember back in the day about Call of Duty games was press X to kill enemy. Press RB to fix generator. It's the same thing, it's drug out over a longer period of time. If they had extra objectives, maybe you had to, take a power cord and plug it into one area with the other without getting caught, or, whatever they could do to, make the game a little spicier and not make me feel like I'm fucking out of my, bored out of my mind. But the deeper mechanics that are there, and I will acknowledge there are deeper mechanics. Basic scrub-ass losers like myself, as I'm not putting in the time to figure out how these deeper mechanics can really make the game interesting. If me and my buddy want to play the game, I want to play as Ash, and my buddy wants to play as, I don't fucking know, Bill. We just want to sit down and play for a few hours and then move on to something else. Now, asking for the game to have more mechanics, and so I don't, an easier to understand system, so I don't have to spend, shit tons of hours to figure it out. Maybe I'm asking too much. There are games that we will talk about where I've spent a lot of hours figuring out the mechanics, but for a game that's so casual focused as this, at least the way it appears to me to be a very casual game, I don't think I'm asking too much from the guys that made fucking Disney's Planes. to implement some new shit. Maybe I am. I don't fucking know. They've kept this game going for 5 years and they never added more to the core gameplay. They just kind of added and sprinkled more garbage to the game itself. I'm done nitpicking the core gameplay. The core gameplay is shit. No one can tell me otherwise. But what other problems do it have besides the core gameplay? Well, the game is really fucking unbalanced. Not the survivors, in my opinion. Now, from what I can tell, this is a very hotly debated subject, but people think that either the game is killer-sided or people think the game is survivor-sided. Personally, from what I've experienced, the game is only survivor-sided if the IQ of the killer is just fucking brain dead. Now, I feel like an asshole trying to use every last ounce of my focus trying to deal with these cocksuckers sometimes. Either the killers are just assholes and they make the game shit. Maybe they're playing asshole killers. We'll get to that in a second. But from what I have experienced, the game for the majority of the time is very killer-sided. And God, there's such a fucking chore to deal with, and I can't help but feel it really hampers the experience. The only way to deal with them is to throw maybe a pallet on their foot. And honestly, that isn't enough. There needs to be more. Give me a handgun or something. Let me shoot the killer. Maybe it doesn't kill them, but it's, staggers. Okay, guns, a little too cliche for you? Let me put some traps down to slow them down. These killers are so easy to play, and sometimes it takes barely any effort for them to steamroll a game if the person playing has just even an ounce of intelligence, or if they're just playing a fucking broken-ass killer. Now that the gameplay is out of the way, the rest of my cons appear to decrease as major detractors. However, they still detract in big ways from the experience, in my opinion. First off, number 1, DLC. This shit cost a pretty hefty chunk of change. Now, normally DLC in a game really wouldn't bother me. If the developers are going to continue to add content to a game to give its player base more mileage out of said game, that's completely fine. Where I draw the line is when I buy a $20 DLC pack and then the devs slap me in the face with cosmetics that I also have to spend money on. This shit is so unforgivable, and the fact that I've spent money on this dumbass shit is so sad on my part. But hey, what can I say? My ass has drip. Charge for expansion packs or charge for cosmetics, but when you charge for both, it just really wrinkles my balls. I understand the devs need to continue to finance the game somehow, but the price of the cosmetics is so goddamn high, it feels like extortion. After the DLC, on a real quick side note, the characters, specifically the killers, some of them are just so brain dead and easy to play that it really is just a hamper to the experience. But the thing is there's a lot of killers that are frustrating, and I'm not really going to go into detail because either that would warrant a whole other video about how some of the killers are just poorly designed, or, either you understand, because if you're probably watching this video, you might have played it, or you haven't, and I hope this video is making sure that you don't play it, because it's a goddamn piece of shit. With that being said, I don't feel like that the killers really warrants much to say other than a lot of them are just poorly designed and way too overpowered. Now, I'm going to try to fit these two complaints together at the cost of not sounding like too much of a prick, but the wait times to find a match in the UI of this game are absolute garbage. I don't think this is a Switch exclusive problem, as my buddy who plays on Xbox is also shocked about how long it took to find a match. I'm not really sure how the game finds matches, so I can't really go into depth about how they could maybe fix it or speed it up, but the game is still supported with DLC and has, not consistent, but it has updates, so that means the player base should be full, right? But moving on to the UI, it's just garbage. The menus are ugly and confusing, and I always feel like I can't find what I'm looking for. Now, this might be the most nitpicky problem I have on this list. but the game is not clear cut, and it always feels frustrating when I'm trying to upgrade my character or go on, or it's just this script has gone on way too long. I think my point maybe has been made. I don't know. There's a lot more I could talk about, but I digress. Now, moving on to the conclusion. I know I said I hope this video keeps you from playing, but honestly, I'm not saying you can't like it or you shouldn't play it. I just personally have a lot of, things that frustrate me. I feel like there could be a great game underneath all these ideas, and if not great, then decent, but it's absolutely buried under an avalanche of problems that really hamper the experience. If you like the game, then more power to you. I mean, I've struggled to get any bit of enjoyment out of it, and I have friends that go fucking nuts for it, and there are things that I can see why they do. The core idea is unique. I love the inclusion of all these different IPs, and it's like the Smash Brothers of horror games, but it's not a fighting game. However, as it stands, I think Dead by Daylight is an incredibly flawed game, and one that Behavior Interactive should really fucking overhaul to make it a much more in-depth experience that could just give me and I'm sure a lot of other people more mileage. For the core community, look, I'm impressed by what you guys can get out of it. Now, I'll hold my tongue, but I got more important shit to talk about, and, I can't be here all day. I can't spend the rest of my life talking about a game I don't like, I just hope that maybe Behavior Interactive just does a little more, because what's underneath it could be great, and you got such great ideas, but it's just missing the mark. Now, these credits, I'm just winging them. Most of this was pretty scripted. I kind of went off script a little bit. I'm sure you guys could tell. Yeah, thanks for watching. I'm kind of new to this whole thing. I just wanted to try it out because I've always had a lot of thoughts about things, thoughts about games and shit that I want to talk about. So I thought I'd just kind of create like a little place where I could do that. Next project I'm working on should have a lot more positivity, a lot more passion put into it. And it's not going to be as kind of a damper as this one. And I want to thank my friends for helping me acquire footage that I need for this game. And, it's, man, I'm not great at doing off-the-cusp credits. Anyway, I will see you guys next time. And I hope y'all all have a fantastic night.